Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course. So today's deep dive starts with a bit of a weird paradox.
Oh, yeah. The data paradox.
Exactly. Because, you, the listener, you likely have more raw information at your fingertips right now than like a Fortune 500 CEO did 10 years ago.
Easily.
Right. But it's probably taking you twice as long to just make a simple decision.
Which is incredibly frustrating.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like, if you've ever stared at a dashboard full of multicolored charts, felt this, like, mild wave of panic, and then just, I don't know, trusted your gut anyway,
Yeah.
you are definitely not alone. You are in the overwhelming majority.
It's honestly a silent epidemic in the modern workplace. I mean, we are surrounded by these incredibly powerful analytical engines, right?
Yeah.
But there's this unspoken assumption that just simply having access to a dashboard automatically grants you the ability to comprehend it.
Which is wild. And to figure out how we actually fix that, we are pulling from a thoroughly detailed article by Felix Römer.
It's a great piece.
Yeah, it's straight from smartkeys.org, and it's titled Data Literacy Programs, Empowering Every Employee to Use Data Effectively.
And it really is essential reading.
Let me tell you, treating this piece as a foundational text is critical for anyone who cares about, their own career trajectory or their business's efficiency.
Absolutely.
It just completely reframes how we should be thinking about upskilling ourselves and the people we work with.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the gap between what companies think is holding them back and what is actually holding them back is massive.
It really is. I mean, the general consensus in the corporate world is usually that a lack of momentum is a technological problem.
Right, like we need better software.
Exactly. If a team isn't innovating fast enough, leadership just assumes, oh, they need a new platform. They need better, faster dashboards.
The shiny new toy.
Yeah, they need the absolute latest, most expensive analytics suite on the market. But the author makes a highly compelling argument here. The biggest blocker to faster growth today is absolutely not a lack of tools.
No, not at all. The tools are sitting right there.
It's like, okay, think of it like this. Giving someone a multi-million-dollar analytics suite without practical data literacy is, it's like buying a multi-million-dollar sports car.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right, like this gorgeous top-of-the-line machine, but you don't know how to drive a manual transmission.
Yeah, so it just sits in the garage.
Exactly. Or, to use the author's kitchen idea, it's like dropping someone in a commercial kitchen with, state-of-the-art convection ovens and exotic ingredients.
But giving them no recipes.
Zero recipes and no understanding of flavor profiles at all. You don't just fail to make a meal in that scenario.
You're probably going to start a fire.
You are definitely going to start a fire. So why does this specific skills gap cause decision-making to stall so dramatically?
What's fascinating here is the underlying psychology behind it. When we talk about a skills gap, we often treat it as, a purely mechanical issue.
Like they just don't know which button to click.
Right. But the reality is that when you don't understand a metric, your brain actually treats it as a threat.
Wow, really? A threat?
Yeah, it's a cognitive load that exposes you to the risk of looking foolish in front of your peers or your boss. It breeds this very specific kind of professional paralysis.
Oh, that makes so much sense because the numbers backing up this disconnect are staggering.
They really are.
The text cites this survey from Accenture that honestly stopped me in my tracks. They surveyed over 9,000 employees across all these different sectors.
So the result is wild.
Out of that massive group, only a shocking 21% feel confident in their ability to use information effectively.
Just 21%. That means 79% of the workforce lacks confidence.
That's practically everyone. So it's not just that reading the report takes them a bit longer, it changes their entire behavior.
Precisely. They actively avoid making the call. That 79% will constantly second-guess the reports. They use these delay tactics, right?
Like asking for more data.
Exactly. Asking for more context or asking the analytics team down the hall to rerun the numbers with a slightly different filter just to be safe.
Oh, I've seen that happen so many times.
Right. It is a neurological self-defense mechanism. But for the business, it creates this massive, endless cycle of rework.
Which is just a huge drain.
A total drain on ROI,
Yeah.
both on the software you bought and the time your people are spending. The entire analytical momentum of a company simply grinds to a halt.
Which leads us perfectly to the mechanics of the solution. Because if we have 79% of employees paralyzed in this commercial kitchen, unable to cook,
Or terrified of the stove.
right, terrified of the stoves, what exactly are the skills they're missing? How do we move them from a state of panic to a state of confidence?
Well, the text breaks this down into 4 core capabilities, or pillars of literacy.
Okay, let's go through them. Let's start with the baseline, which the author calls reading.
Yeah, so reading in this context is the baseline alphabet of your business metrics. It is not just the physical act of looking at a number on a screen.
Like, oh, the number is 5.
Right. It's knowing what that number actually represents in reality. Like if a dashboard shows a spike in sales, you need to know, is this a median or an average?
Oh, well, that's a huge difference.
Massive difference. Does this percentage represent year-over-year growth, or is it month-over-month? If you can't read those foundational elements, you can't even begin to form a sentence, let alone write a whole story about your performance.
Okay, so let's say I know how to read the chart. I understand the difference between a median and an average.
Good.
But what happens when the chart is just broken or the spreadsheet I downloaded is like a total disaster? I assume I can't just analyze it as is.
No, definitely not. And that brings us to the second pillar, which is working with data.
Working with, okay.
That is the crucial next step. Working with data is about creating, cleaning, and managing the files themselves. Because in the real world, information is rarely neat and tidy.
It's usually a mess.
It's always a mess. It comes in with duplicate entries, formatting errors, or just missing values.
Right.
If your foundational file is flawed, any sophisticated analysis you build on top of it is going to be fundamentally wrong. Garbage in, garbage out.
Makes sense. So once we've cleaned the kitchen and prepped the ingredients, we move to the third pillar, which is analyzing. This seems to be where we actually start extracting value, right? Answering the real questions.
It is. Analyzing is the skill of filtering out the noise, comparing different sets of information, and spotting trends over time.
So finding the signal in the noise.
Exactly. It is the ability to ask a specific question and know exactly how to manipulate the information to find a reliable answer.
And that leads directly to the fourth and final pillar, which I honestly think gets ignored the most, arguing.
Oh, without a doubt, it gets completely overlooked.
The author defines this as explaining findings clearly so others can actually act on them, because you can do the most brilliant, error-free analysis in the world.
But if no one understands it,
Right. If you can't communicate it to a stakeholder in a way that makes sense to them, you might as well have done nothing.
arguing is where the actual business value is realized. It is about building a cohesive, compelling narrative around the numbers so that a decision can be made and action can actually be taken.
Okay, so those are the 4 pillars. Now, to get teams proficient in these, the training program detailed in the text introduces a very specific technical stack.
It does.
And I have to admit, looking at the syllabus as a non-engineer, it is intimidating.
It sounds like a lot.
It mentions prerequisites like basic Python, understanding data types, conditionals, loops, functions. It talks about core math like probability, distributions, linear algebra, and statistics.
It is a very robust and technically dense curriculum.
But wait, it goes further. It demands hands-on skills using Python libraries like pandas and NumPy to clean tabular sets.
Yep.
It requires visualization labs using tools called Matplotlib and Seaborn so you pick the right charts and avoid creating misleading visuals. And then it throws in writing clean SQL for reliable queries and sanity checks.
It's a heavy stack.
Okay, I have to push back hard here. I am putting myself in the shoes of an overwhelmed professional, maybe a customer service agent, a local branch manager, or a frontline sales rep.
Okay.
Wait, basic Python and linear algebra for every single frontline worker? Isn't that the exact opposite of avoiding information overload?
I completely understand the skepticism. It sounds like a recipe for a mass exodus of your staff.
Right. People would just quit.
But that is exactly why the author explicitly emphasizes a role-based focus. The text is very clear that this is absolutely not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, you are not putting a customer service rep through the exact same rigorous Python boot camp as a junior data scientist.
I am incredibly relieved to hear that. So how does this actually work in practice? Because just reading that list of software made my own cognitive load spike.
Right. Well, it all starts with baseline assessments. Before anyone opens a textbook, installs a program, or writes a single line of code, the training program maps out what individuals already know.
Okay, so taking an inventory.
Exactly. It finds where their specific operational gaps are. This gives leaders a clear snapshot of current proficiency by role, which allows them to right-size the learning paths.
So tailoring the weight of the information to the shoulders of the person carrying it.
That's a great way to put it.
Can you give me a concrete example of how this breaks down? Let's take those scary terms, pandas, SQL, matplotlib, and apply them to someone who isn't an engineer.
Sure, let's break down the jargon. Take pandas, for instance.
Mhm.
Pandas sounds like an animal, but in this context, it is simply a Python library that acts like a superpowered version of Excel.
Okay, superpowered Excel, I can grasp that.
Right. It lets you sift through millions of rows of data in seconds instead of, crashing your laptop.
Which Excel loves to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And SQL is just a standardized language used to ask a database a question and get a reliable answer back.
Got it.
And Matplotlib and Seaborn, they're just visualization tools. I mean, a pie chart with 50 slices is technically data, but it is humanly useless.
That's a nightmare to look at. Seaborn just helps you build a visual that the human brain can actually process and understand in 3 seconds.
Okay, that immediately makes it sound less like a foreign language and more like just an upgrade to tools I already use.
Yeah.
But what about the math, the linear algebra and probability?
Well, when the text mentions core math, it isn't talking about sitting down to take a college-level calculus exam.
Yeah.
It means understanding basic probability mechanics. For example, knowing if a sudden 10% spike in your website traffic is an actual actionable trend that you should pour marketing money into.
Or just a fluke.
Exactly. Or if it's just a random statistical fluke that you should ignore.
Okay, let's apply this to a real-world role then. How does a frontline worker actually use this right-size training without getting bogged down?
Imagine a local delivery driver. We are not teaching them to build complex machine learning models. We are giving them access to a simple dashboard that shows traffic patterns correlated with historical package volume.
Through the reading and working with pillars, they learn to interpret that specific dashboard. By trusting what they see, they proactively rearrange their delivery route in the morning, saving themselves 45 minutes a day and hitting their bonuses.
Wow.
That is data literacy in action. The heavy software usage is scaled entirely behind the scenes, leaving the frontline worker with simple, repeatable daily habits that improve their specific workflow.
That's brilliant. Meanwhile, an executive's learning path probably looks completely different, right?
Completely different. They don't necessarily need to know how to write the SQL query themselves.
Right.
Their training focuses entirely on the arguing and analyzing pillars, interpreting the insights they are handed, and learning how to ask sharper, more critical questions to uncover blind spots.
So the goal isn't to turn everyone into coder.
No, not at all. It's to take away the friction of the interface so they can focus on the meaning.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, if you overwhelm someone with linear algebra when all they need to know is how to interpret a basic bar chart to improve their daily sales calls, you have lost them. They will retreat right back into that 79% of unconfident, paralyzed employees.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the article makes a massive pivot halfway through.
It does.
Knowing the tools, whether it's basic chart reading or writing advanced Python scripts, is great. But the author places a huge emphasis on things that exist entirely outside of the software.
The human element.
Exactly. We're talking about language, leaders, and corporate culture.
Because technical skills are essentially meaningless in a vacuum. You can have a team of brilliant coders, but if the business environment doesn't support them, their insights will never translate into action.
Right.
The text highlights a highly critical concept here, establishing a shared vocabulary.
I have to admit, I hear a phrase like shared vocabulary and my eyes instantly glaze over.
It sounds a bit corporate, right?
It sounds like an HR buzzword that gets put on a motivational poster and then completely ignored. Give me a concrete reason why semantics actually affect a company's bottom line.
Okay, consider your own inbox or the last cross-departmental meeting you sat in. Think about how often those meetings derail completely because marketing's definition of a qualified lead is fundamentally different from the sales team's definition of a qualified lead.
Oh, wow.
Marketing brings a beautiful Seaborn chart showing lead generation is up 50%. Sales brings a chart showing conversions are down 20%.
Oh, I've lived through those meetings. It turns into an hour of arguing over who is right or whose spreadsheet is broken before anyone even looks at the actual performance or tries to solve the problem.
That is the cost of not having a shared vocabulary. When a company establishes common definitions and unified metrics across the board, they remove that friction.
So everyone is literally on the same page.
A shared vocabulary ensures that when you do cross-team analysis, everyone is speaking the exact same language. It means the insights actually drive business outcomes instead of just sparking a territorial debate over semantics.
And the real-world application of this cultural shift is incredibly tangible. When teams are taught to frame their questions properly using the same language, and when they know how to validate the information they are seeing, the business dramatically reduces guesswork.
Absolutely.
You aren't operating on gut feelings anymore.
You speed up decisions because the hesitation we talked about earlier, that neurological fear of looking foolish, is gone. But for that shared vocabulary and that confidence to take root, the culture has to actively support it.
Which brings us to the leaders. The text makes it very clear that leadership cannot just be, passive cheerleaders here. They have to back the change fundamentally.
Leadership behavior is the single biggest failure point for any data initiative. Long-term gains depend entirely on executives and managers who visibly model analytic habits.
So they can't just talk the talk.
No, it is absolutely not enough for a CEO to send out a company-wide email saying, go learn data, and then continue making decisions based on their gut.
Which happens all the time.
All the time. Leaders need to sponsor the kickoffs. They need to set clear, measurable expectations. And perhaps most importantly, they need to offer safe forums and small rewards for curiosity.
Let's dig into that safe forums concept, because safe space is another one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot. How does a safe forum actually function to fix the psychological paralysis we discussed earlier?
Well, learning to work with numbers intrinsically involves making mistakes. It is unavoidable. You will misinterpret a chart at some point.
Right.
You will run a bad SQL query that pulls the wrong information. If the corporate culture heavily punishes those errors, like if someone gets publicly berated in a meeting for reading a metric wrong, people will immediately hide their work, or they simply won't try at all.
They retreat back to the 79%?
Yes. A safe forum means treating errors as necessary learning steps, not fireable offenses. It means it is actively encouraged to bring a half-baked analysis to your manager and say, hey, I'm not sure if I'm applying this probability concept correctly. Can we look at the logic together?
That's a huge cultural shift.
It is. Rewarding that vulnerability and curiosity rather than only rewarding the final polished presentation is how you build lasting confidence. You are essentially retraining the brain to stop seeing data as a threat.
And the timeline for this kind of transformation is surprisingly fast, which I found really encouraging. The text notes that you can move a team from hesitation to clear action in a matter of months, provided the training is tied directly to their real daily workflows.
Yeah, measurable bottom-line progress happens within a year.
That's incredibly fast for corporate change.
It works so rapidly because the learning isn't abstract. If you take a 15-minute micro lesson on data cleaning on Tuesday and you immediately use it to automate your weekly reporting on Wednesday, that skill is cemented.
Because you actually used it.
Right. You instantly feel the relief of saving 2 hours of manual work.
Yeah.
That immediate feedback loop is what drives the cultural shift.
So, what does this all mean? If we bring all these strategic insights back to you, the listener, sitting at your desk right now, thinking about your own career trajectory or how your team is operating.
It means that the era of being able to say, I'm just not a numbers person, and having that be an acceptable professional stance is rapidly coming to an end.
It really is. The main practical takeaway from everything we've unpacked today is that moving from hesitation to clear, confident action is entirely achievable.
Definitely.
It does not require a master's degree in computer science. It doesn't require you to become a software engineer overnight. It requires right-sized, role-based training. It requires an understanding of the 4 pillars: reading, working with, analyzing, and arguing.
Exactly.
The future of work absolutely belongs to the professionals and the teams that possess practical skills, a shared understanding of their metrics, and the psychological confidence to turn raw information into measurable outcomes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this raises an important question, something I'd highly encourage you to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Oh, I like where this is going.
We started with that staggering Accenture statistic, right? Only 21% of the workforce is confident in their data skills today.
Yeah.
What happens to the competitive advantage of the companies and the individual professionals who figure out how to unlock the potential of the other 79% first?
That's a massive advantage.
It is. Will data literacy simply become the new basic literacy? Just as fundamental as reading and writing became during the Industrial Revolution, will the ability to read, work with, analyze, and argue with data be the absolute baseline requirement for participation in the modern economy?
When you start looking at data as a highly specialized tool meant only for a few experts in a back room and start treating it as a basic universal language for the many, the entire landscape changes. You stop drowning in the ocean of information and you finally start swimming.
Well said.
Thank you for tuning in to the Smart Keys podcast. We hope this deep dive gave you the strategic insights and the practical frameworks you need to start unlocking that massive potential in your own work. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you can keep staying ahead of the curve with us on future topics.
And if you want to dig into the specifics of those learning paths, the software stack, or how to implement baseline assessments, please read Felix Römer's full article.
Yes, definitely read it. We've dropped the direct link right in the show notes for you. Until next time, keep asking the right questions.